Changing gears to our opening line of local content, the city is looking to the public for feedback with its 2022 Social Needs Campaign.
We don't intend this to be a report that sits on a shelf somewhere. This is something that we want to use for building our plan over the next 5 years.
The goal of the survey is to provide a snapshot of the community's social well-being. In 2017, the public identified mental health and affordable recreation as areas of concern.
In direct response to that, some of the city initiatives that went into play were the development of several different mental health workshops and our partnership work with Project Sunrise, as well as the development of the Recreation Access Program.
A unique feature to this year's assessment is a partnership with the Lloydminster's Youth Council. In correspondence with the city survey, a separate youth assessment is also available for adolescents.
You know, a lot of the times we as youth don't really get that opportunity to tell you how we feel about our city, what we think the city needs, right? So that was definitely something we were super excited to get started with, and here we are today.
Both versions of the survey are available at www.lloydneeds.ca. Residents have until May 30th to complete a submission. On Thursday, the federal government introduced the 2022 budget. One of the creations was a tax-free first home savings account. But as Jasmine King tells us, one local realtor says it might not be as promising as it sounds.
The tax-free First Home Savings Account will be created for the focus of helping Canadians who are struggling to get into the housing market. Individuals would be able to save $8,000 per year into the account that has a maximum of $40,000, although one realtor says it may be insufficient.
If the price of houses continue to increase, as we have started to see in the past few months, that possibility of saving the funds needed may not be still enough in 5 years when those buyers are able to get into the market.
The savings account is expected to be implemented in 2023. However, McIsaac says the new program doesn't address the current problem at hand.
There have been programs available to new home buyers, the tax-free savings account, being able to borrow against their RSPs. I think the government may have missed their mark on what needs to be looked at, and that is the lack of supply that we have available for home buyers.
The housing shortage has had an effect across the country for buyers and renters. McIsaac attributes that to a few different factors.
Rising cost of interest rates, with the inflation that we're experiencing, more of sellers are starting to think, maybe I just want to stay in my home. If I sell, I'm going to have to go into something else. Am I really going to change what I'm looking for in the process of selling my home and moving to a new one?
The government also announced plans to ban foreign investors from buying homes in Canada for 2 years. However, this won't have much of an impact on our area. Jasmine King, Primetime Local News.
It's time now for this week's retrospect. Here is Blake Nath.
This week in retrospect, we take a look back at the effects of rising electricity prices in '92.
That to us is a heck of an increase.
The Northern Glow plant in Lloydminster makes shingles, nearly $2 million a year, which makes for an annual power bill of $182,000. With possible changes to the Energy Marketing Act, plant spokesman Ed Edquist estimates a cost increase of more than $48,000 when the price of producing a shingle is 9.5 cents.
If we added a 25% increase to that, that works out to about 12 cents a unit. Now when you're talking about cents per unit, that doesn't sound like much, but if you look at the wholesale cost of a bundle or a roll of product, that adds up to roughly a 7.5% increase in our unit cost.
Nelson Lumber is another big border city business that relies on large amounts of electricity. The company constructs prefabricated homes, and a 25% increase in power costs translates to a $30,000 jump in the price of production.
A $30,000 increase wouldn't require us to go back and go through all our budgetary processes, but it gives you less flexibility to make changes, buy new equipment, things like that we'd have to reconsider.
And cash and the community. We take a look back to '97 when the town of Bonnyville debated a controversial bylaw.
A Midwest woman has sparked a petition to see VLTs banned from her community. Bonnyville is the latest town to voice its concerns on slot machines.
I think they should be out of the small towns, period.
For now, organizers are mainly trying to circulate their petition. Once they get 518 names, or roughly 10% of the population, they can take their petition to City Council. If the petition makes it that far, a public vote can be called to see what the future of video lottery terminals will be in the town. Lynn Adams is meeting with some opposition from bar and restaurant owners who say the slot machines are their livelihood.
If you look at some of the establishments in this town, they do depend a considerable amount on the revenue that's generated from them. It does create employment. I think when I look at that, I think some of the urgency of having them removed would be displaced if the government would have acted on the Judy Gordon report earlier and send some money back to the communities to where it would show some benefit.
They were all making a living before we had VLTs, and now they're still just making a living. It doesn't help that much more. Take out the VLTs, give better service to your customers. You're still going to get as many customers as you had before. And you won't be taking money out of pockets of your own friends, neighbors, and relatives.
And that's all for this week in retrospect.
Retrospect this week is brought to you by Webb's Ford. Worth your while to drive the extra mile. Webb's Ford in Vermilion.
Now, our Shelby Clark has a first look at your evening forecast.
Thanks so much, Evan. Now taking a first look at your weather forecast here in the border city, we definitely have cooled down quite a bit, already starting off this week compared to what we have been seeing last week, which is unfortunate. I know lots of people are definitely a little bit sad, especially since we are in April here, but we are sitting at -4 with a mix, some sun and cloud, and we are feeling like -11 with that wind chill, so it is feeling a lot cooler outside, and we are seeing some strong winds, so make sure you do bundle up if you're ever going to be outside whatsoever. Now switching over to temperatures across the region for Alberta and Saskatchewan, we are seeing those single-digit points, but we are in the minus areas for most spots on the map. Most spots seeing around -3, -4 degrees. Unfortunately, St. Paul is at -5, while down in Wainwright and Provost they are seeing -2. Now switching over to our Saskatchewan side here, they are seeing those single-digit temps as well, but they are looking slightly cooler compared to our Alberta side. -6 up in Isle Lacrosse as well as down in North Battleford. -4 in Green Lake, Maidstone, and Pearsland, while it is -7 in Meadow Lake. St. Walburg is looking at -5 right now, and Macklin is seeing -2 as well. And for North Battleford overnight, they will be going down to a low of -10, so they will be cooling down quite a bit, hitting those double digits. They will be seeing a high chance of some flurries throughout their evening, but that will cease throughout the night, and they will be seeing no flurries in their morning at -6 throughout the day, but they will be still seeing some cloudier skies. Switching out to Cold Lake, they'll be cooling down to -11, so they will be cooling down quite a bit. They will be seeing some high chance of some flurries, around a 30% chance. Then tomorrow they will be seeing -5 with a little bit more cloudier skies as well, so we will be seeing a cooler day. And now for here in the border city, we'll be seeing those double digits, -10. We will be seeing a 30% chance of some flurries starting off in our evening, and that will continue throughout the night. But tomorrow morning that will stop, and then we will be seeing -4 throughout our day. So we will still be seeing a cool day as what we saw today, but not as much sun. We will be seeing some cloudier skies. And now looking at your 3-day forecast for here in the border city, we will be continuing that -4 track into Wednesday as well with a lot more cloudier skies. Then Thursday we will warm up slightly to that 0 mark with a mix of some sun and cloud. That's the first look at your weather forecast. Our Evan Kenny, more news coming up after the break.
The 86th edition of the Masters Tournament wrapped up over the weekend. Now, Evan, I wasn't someone who followed this tournament too closely, but I think you're one of the best, the biggest golf fans I know. I know you were dialed into this tournament.
Yeah, Jace, no, I was definitely, like you said, dialed in for this past 4 days from Thursday to Sunday. Jace, the Masters is my favorite golf tournament out there, not just when it comes to majors. For us locally, the golf season is just around the corner. And for me, when I see them out there playing on Augusta, it sort of feels like the shotgun start to the season. Now, this past weekend, Augusta National did play incredibly difficult, especially when it came to Saturday. Just 9 players broke even or better for that Saturday, one being world number 1 and the newest player to get the green jacket in Scottie Scheffler.
Now, as you mentioned, Scheffler, he won the tournament finishing with a 10 under. Can you kind of just take us through his game a little bit? What did you see from him that you liked?
Yeah, Jace, his game was really just consistency, and not just this weekend, but really for all of 2022, Scottie Scheffler has been incredibly consistent. Ahead of this season, he was searching for his first win, had never won before. Now, he's won 4 of his last 6 tournaments. And he really this weekend played to his strengths. He never really got scrambly. He always hit the consistent shot, never really forcing anything, and relied heavily on his chipping. He had about 6 or 7 chips on Sunday alone that were highlight reel chips, sticking them within about 5 feet of the hole. His wedge play was just better than anybody else's out there. He's now the world number 1 and really proved it. Jace, really the best way to describe his weekend, it's sort of boring golf for lack of a better word, but it's just because he was hitting it so well and playing so consistent.
Now, what were some of the other interesting stories that you were following? Obviously, I think Tiger Woods making his remarkable return would be one, but what else were you taking a look at?
Yeah, Jace, definitely, following Tiger along. His first 2 rounds, he played very, very well. He was able to make the cut. Not so well on Saturday or Sunday, shooting 78s there. But nonetheless, considering, where he was 1 year ago, phenomenal to see Tiger back out at the Masters. A couple other stories. I always love personally to follow the Canadians. There was 3 of them in the field this weekend with Corey Connors finishing the best. He was tied for 6th, shooting a 3 under on the weekend, and actually a 6th is the best that Corey Connors has ever done at a major tournament, let alone at the Masters. So, he strikes it so well. It's been fantastic to see. He's really the next Canadian up and coming. Mackenzie Hughes and Mike Weir were the other 2 Canadians riding along with them. And speaking of Mike Weir, another story that I always like to follow is watching the old guys, those former winners who just, they get invited back every single year if you do win the Masters. So, seeing those old guys hitting it around, that's always fun for me to see. And then finally, Jace, Rory McIlroy on Sunday, he played lights out. He shot 8 under. He shot 8 under on Sunday, which actually ties a record low for the Masters, specifically on Sunday. So he played out of his mind. Bogey-free round, 6 birdies, and an eagle there, including a nice little chip in on 18 to finish it off. So Rory McIlroy wasn't able to win that career Grand Slam, as all he's missing is the Masters. However, he did a fantastic job to claw back to 2nd. He was actually also down 10 shots on Scottie Scheffler to start the day and ended up just losing by a couple shots there. So all in all, Jace, a fantastic weekend of golf.
Well, the PGA's next major tournament is going to be the PGA Championship, and that's taking place on May 19th.
Furniture set and design supplied by Furniture Gallery and Furniture House, downtown Lloydminster.
Joining us for Primetime Local News is Josh Ramsey, the frontman of Mariana's Trench, who has released his first solo album called The Josh Ramsey Show, and this was just released on Friday the 8th. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
No, thank you. We're really glad to be able to have you on here because I was saying even before, I'm sure we have so many fans of your work here in the border city and are so excited now that they are able to finally listen to this album. So how has support and response been so far since the release?
You know what? It's been really great. I'll admit, I was really nervous because, I think what I've done here was quite a risk because every track has a different genre. I realized sort of that means that there's not really like a unified sound to the record. And I know that I was worried that might alienate some people. But instead, I think the response has been like overwhelmingly great, which is amazing. I'm so grateful. But I really just set out to do something that was not a Mariana's Trench record because it was the quarantine. We couldn't see each other, and I still wanted to be creative. And I'd always planned on doing an album where I played all the instruments myself, and then sort of the pandemic and the quarantine sort of just provided the perfect opportunity for me to do that. One interesting thing is like with the last Mariana's Trench album, which was called Phantoms, there was like a really heavy deadline on that album. Like it was like the most intense deadline I've ever had, and I didn't think I was going to be able to make it. So I'm still really proud of that album, but I feel like it was missing about 3 tracks. Like I felt I wanted it to have like a few more songs, but there just simply wasn't the time. Whereas when I did this, because the whole world was shut down for that 2-year period, and all of us working in showbiz had nothing to do basically. I had no deadlines. I had no deadlines at all. So this album is the result of what I could do if I just locked myself in a room for a year and just got nuts.
And can we talk a little bit about with this album, since you had like so much time to be able to work on it and all that too, which is great to hear. I didn't have to hustle for a deadline. You almost could kind of dig deep and everything. But can we talk about what's involved in this album, including like collaborators, everyone you worked with?
Yeah, I did have a lot of great guest vocalists, and that was another great thing because of the pandemic, is everyone was available. Almost everyone. There were only 2 people that I asked who were unavailable because they were busy working on their own projects, which is totally understandable. But for the most part, everyone was available and good to go. So I really sort of just set out to being like, okay, I'm going to write a song in this style. I'm going to write a song in this style. I'm going to do something in this genre. And most of the time, I'd say about 90% of them, I was like, okay, so I'm going to write, I'm working on this like 70s rock song. I really hope that, I wonder if Chad Kruger would say yes to this. And in my head, I started picturing his voice. So I like wrote that melody for him. And like, I did that for most of the people on this record. I was picturing those singers and knew that I would be sending it to them. And I also didn't send any like rough demos to anyone. I sent like fully produced finished songs because I wanted them to be framed in their best light to try and pitch people on joining it. But yeah, I was really fortunate. I was really honored to sing with so many great singers. And one of the most exciting things was like, I'd been living with the songs for a while, and with the current version having been just me singing everything. And then when I started getting vocals sent in to me from other people, because I didn't really produce anyone on the spot, like none of them need that. So they just did vocals on their own and sent it over, with the exception of a couple people where it did work out that we could be there at the same time. But most people did stuff remotely and sent it in. And that was like the most exciting thing. It was like a kid on Christmas every time I got someone's new vocal, because I would put their voice into the song and hear the song totally change and come to a new life, because it's like hearing a great singer do their own interpretation that I wouldn't have never thought of and wouldn't have done it that way. And that was just such a cool, it was such a cool gift on each track, just like hearing all these different singers' interpretations.
And I know you were already a little speaking about the pandemic and quarantine and whatnot, but was there something else that really inspired you to write this album?
Yeah, there was a few things. There were a few direct things that I wanted to talk about specifically, like right at the beginning of the pandemic, right before everything shut down, my wife and I got married, and that was something that was obviously very important to me, and I wanted to definitely address that. I lost both my parents during the quarantine, sort of about 6 months apart from each other, and I wanted to make sure to have a track for each of them. But I didn't want this out. I mean, look, it's been a tough 2 years for everybody, right? And I didn't want to do any sad songs on this album. There's no sad songs. I didn't want to do any songs about grief or loss or lament or any of that. I wanted it to be a really uplifting listen. So in addressing something like losing your parents, rather than have those songs be about grief, they're really about celebrating them as people and remembering them, and they're very full of love. And I put a lot of thought into those songs. Like my mom was like quite a magical lady, and she had been a professional singer sort of in the late 60s and through the 70s in Leonard Cohen's band. And she used to hang out with like, Simon and Garfunkel and Bob Dylan and all these guys. So I wanted to write her a song that sort of felt like that era. So I wrote her like a very Beatlesy inspired, sort of magical, almost Disneyland sounding song called Spellbound. And that one I did bring in some collaborators in the form of some symphony players. And then the song for my dad, I learned so much about arrangement and music in general from my dad. So I wanted to write him an entire symphony orchestra and just kind of like show off all the things I could do because I learned it from him. And that was actually probably the most difficult thing I've ever recorded, because I'll tell you right now, if you write yourself a full symphony orchestra and you try and record it during a pandemic when everyone has to be socially distant, it's very difficult. So I thought I was going to have to just do it using sample libraries and have it be all fake. And then I eventually realized that I could do it as long as I only brought in like 5 or 6 people at a time. So I recorded the orchestra like in tiny little groups, and it took a couple of weeks to put it all together. And then it took a really long time to edit it and make it actually sound like a 150-person orchestra playing together, because it was actually, only 5 people at a time. So it was very time consuming to work on, but it was really rewarding hearing the finished product for sure.
No, that's really great to hear. I'm glad we were able to speak on this and everything like that. So hopefully everybody watching this will go and check out your new album. But once again, thank you so much for joining us today, Josh.
Thanks for having me. It's been quite a pleasure. Thank you.
Ending off, we'll take another quick look at tomorrow's temperatures across the region. We will be seeing another kind of slightly cooler day than what we have been seeing today for sure. Kind of between -3 to -5 in most spots on the map, except for North Battleford. Might be a bit cooler at -6 for tomorrow. And now ending off with our 7-day forecast, another look for here in the border city. We will be seeing that -4 for the next 2 days with some cloudier skies, so get ready to not see too much sun this week, unfortunately. Thursday we'll just be hitting that 0 mark, and then Friday, starting off our Easter weekend, we will be hitting 1 with a high chance of some flurries once again. And those flurries will come back to end off the weekend on Sunday there at 6 degrees, so we will warm up and hopefully we will be seeing some light snowfall. And then next Monday we will be seeing 6 degrees once again.
Well, thank you for that, Shelby, and thank you everybody for tuning in to this edition of Primetime Local News. You can catch more news in the next hour.